I'm Greg Norman. If there's one thing I've always admired, it's the ability to be the best no matter what the obstacles over a long period of time. This year marks the 50th birthday of one such Australian legend, the Holden motor car. In 1948, Prime Minister Ben Chifley officially launched this car, the Holden 48215, with the happy words, "She's a beauty, she still is." During this program, we're going to take a look at those 50 fabulous years and see why Holden has been such an icon in this country. It's an Australian success story that we can all be proud of. The story of Australia's own car actually began in 1856, when James Alexander Holden set up a business in Adelaide making harnesses and saddles. By 1879, the business of J.A. Holden and Son, Henry, was well established. By 1905, when Henry Holden's son Edward joined, the motor car was making its presence felt on Adelaide roads. The first General Motors cars were exported to Australia from America in 1914. And when the events of World War I caused an embargo on the importation of car bodies, Holden and Frost began large-scale local production. When the worldwide depression hit in the 30s, the number of car bodies Holdens built per year tumbled dramatically, from 36,000 to 1,600. As a result, GM bought it out and formed General Motors Holdens. Englishman Lawrence Hartnett was given the challenge to turn GMH into a profitable and expanding company. It was then that Hartnett and other GMH executives began pursuing an ideal, the manufacture of a complete car in Australia. But the dream was put on hold when a far greater challenge arose, winning the Second World War as part of the Allied forces. It was an immense effort by Holden's people. Everybody had to learn and produce quickly, so skills and techniques advanced just as rapidly. There might have been a war on, but Australians still needed cars. With many Australian men away fighting, women took over their jobs, and they performed brilliantly. The war effort proved the potential of secondary industry in Australia, so the government threw out the challenge. GMH was ready and determined to manufacture a car without subsidy or tariff protection. Late in '44, Hartnett went to the US and won over the General Motors hierarchy.
C. Wilson, on the other hand, was a pro, and he made a very pointed question to me. Well, Larry, supposing we said go ahead, would it be the Chevrolet or the Vauxhall or the Opel? And I said none of them. But designed for low volume for the peculiarities of Australia. Much to my surprise and relief, he says, "Goddamn good horse sense." So that was an approval.
The war ended in triumph for the Allies and for General Motors Holdens. So GMH engineers traveled to Motor City, Detroit, Michigan in the USA with their styling models and ideas for the Aussie car.
The company set up an office for us in the General Motors building, and we had a complete design office there, drafting and also facilities to get parts manufactured. After we built the cars, we tested them on the General Motors proving ground.
Milford was a very elaborate place with all sorts of hills, skid pans and speed loops, and the car was exercised there largely to develop the ride and handling and all that sort of thing that could be done at such a proving ground.
The Australian car takes to the high-speed lane for an engine performance test. From designing boards, from thorough research, and from rigorous and exacting tests made at the proving ground, General Motors Engineering, through commercial specifications supplied by the staff of General Motors Holden, have produced this new automobile for Australia.
In late 1946, 3 handmade cars were shipped in secrecy to Sydney. Unbelievably, the 3 cars were driven under cover of darkness from Sydney to Melbourne, and nobody from the press spotted them. Everybody at GMH knew that the time to launch their new car was close, but what would it be called? Coming up next, we'll see the launch of a legend. The Emu and the Melba. GMH executives wanted the name of our new car to be short and catchy, and definitely Australian. Finally, a name was chosen. Would you believe? The Canberra. But then there was a change of mind. Why not salute the name that began it all? The Holden. It was the perfect name. At Fisherman's Bend, the employees worked around the clock to have everything ready for the November 29th launch day. After years of planning, testing, sheer determination, and hard work by GMH around Australia, the Holden 48215, commonly known as the FX, was ready to roll.
There was really never any chance that it would be a squib in any way.
It was a great day, that day 50 years ago. If the men and women of GMH were proud and excited, then so was Australia's Prime Minister Ben Chifley. He loved the car. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Australians loved the Holden. Everybody wanted to be the first in their street or town to own one.
It wasn't a fussy car to drive. It was a car that the minute you got in it and drove it round the block seemed effortlessly easy.
It was very exciting, actually, when it turned out to be such a success. I mean, we started building, I think, 10 a day, and then the orders started to flow in, and we couldn't cope with them.
And I remember seeing the very first Holden come into our town, come into Hurstbridge. I stood on the footpath on the edge of the town, watching it wind down this little narrow, dusty road into Hurstbridge, and we stood there. I was about 3 or 4 years old at the time, just watching this car, and it was just magical.
Holden in the 50s were very good for each other. The austere war years were long gone. It was the decade of families and fun and rock and roll.
Suddenly there was a car that almost from the moment it was released was commercially viable. The market wanted it and they were prepared to pay for it, and it went in droves.
Another legendary part of Australian popular culture, the Ute, was introduced in 1951, and planning was already well underway for a new model, to be known as the FJ. If the public loved the 48215, then they absolutely adored the FJ and its exuberant new grille. There was a close bond among all at GMH. They worked hard and made sure they enjoyed themselves, especially at their annual picnics. GMH wanted to introduce a more modern, Australian-designed body which was bigger and roomier.
We were always a little apprehensive as whether we'd get the same reaction that we'd had at previous models, but usually we were very, very happy as it came about.
The interest in a new Holden those days was just phenomenal. You used to get front pages of the newspapers and posters, actual newspaper posters saying "New Holden!" exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
The FE was launched in July 1956, and once again, Holden could do no wrong. The FE and Australia seemed made for each other.
Holden, you in my Holden, life is simply divine. All the world is fair, I'm a millionaire. On the road ahead, there's a happy sign.
He's known as the average man, and he was used by General Motors Holdens in designing the new Holden. In short, Mr. Average Man is just a transparent plastic cutout, but he conforms to the general physical appearance of the average Australian. He was used in checking the position of the seats, the brake and clutch pedals, and the steering wheel. Indeed, he was very important throughout the 3 years it took to develop the new Holden.
Whether your family is small or large like this one, you'll enjoy the smoothest, most comfortable motoring at lowest cost in a Holden. Let's see just how roomy and how comfortable Holden really is. See how wide Holden seats are, how comfortably you sink back into them, how much legroom there is. Yes, how proudly you'll drive a Holden. For Holden combines all the things that make going places so much more fun. Roominess for 6, space for all your luggage, wide, clear vision, and smooth, silent riding.
2 years later, the FC replaced the FE, and Holden achieved an incredible 50% market share.
Holden had hit on the right formula, the formula that people in the country obviously wanted, and in a sense, for a long time there was no rival, so they had this massive market share.
A new plant was built in Elizabeth, South Australia, and subsequently opened by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth.
The Queen and Prince Philip talk informally with some of the men. Many of the men working in this plant have come to Australia from Europe to settle with their families in the garden town of Elizabeth. The employees and their families have another opportunity to cheer the royal couple as they drive from the body assembly plant to the body hardware plant.
Also, in 1958, GMH's own testing facility, the Lang Lang Proving Ground, south of Melbourne, opened. Since 1958, Lang Lang has played a vital part in the development of every new model of Holden, virtually putting the cars through hell and packing more into a month of testing than the average motorist would do in a couple of lifetimes. What a first 10 years, but there are even more exciting years ahead, the 60s. That's next. It was the decade that shook the world with its vibrant music and bold fashions. A rebellious time when being young was a statement. And what an exciting and competitive decade the 60s was for Holden. For the first time, GMH had local rivals, Ford and Chrysler.
Yeah, the introduction of Valiant and Ford's Falcon gave us a new sense of purpose because we realised that we had some real competition.
And immediately it did provide competition and it lifted the standards for everybody, and that's why we got these improvements in styling and ultimately in many other features as well.
The 60s began for Holden with the release of the FB. Stylistically, it was a significant change.
Australian as they come, that's Holden.
Call the family, take the wheel. Feel that new big style appeal. First in styling, first in sales. Holden's number one. Holden, 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 Holden.
It's the day when the woman of the house looks at those extra special things.
like the sheer-look Frigidaire refrigerators, the sort that every woman wants in her kitchen. These refrigerators and cooking appliances have the luxury look that rarely appeals to the modern housewife. And they're all part of the vast stream of first-class equipment made and distributed in Australia by GMH.
Next came the models widely considered by many as their favorite Holdens, the EJ and the EH. As well as the distinctive restyled body, the range introduced the name Premier, which for the next 2 decades would be identified with luxurious Holdens. The EJ was the first Holden to feature safety belt anchorages, and its production run included the millionth Holden.
Well, this is the year of the millionth Holden, and this is the millionth Holden. And here is another man who's been responsible for its production in one form or the other, Mr. Caleb Stock. Caleb, how long have you been with GMH?
22 years.
The EH was a very functionally styled car by comparison with other cars of that period.
The 60s also saw the Canadian hell drivers visit and do some alarming things with their Holdens.
This is called precision driving. Here's a new way to do a U-turn. Skidding bumpers at 60 miles an hour. Anyone could do this after 20 years of practice. Did I tell you they drive one-handed? The other arm's held behind the seat for support. Here's Pete Grosh killing off a gleaming, not-so-late model. Playing with danger is strictly a business for hell drivers.
Holden continued to change models. The initial demand for the 1965 HD was exceptionally high, but then the new model's earlier promise was not realized. So GMH hit back immediately with the HR.
Yes, something's happened to Holden. Look again, look closely. The time is now, and the car is Holden, engineered to a new turbo-smooth power. Your world changes around you when you discover new Holden.
1968 was a monumental year for GMH because 2 famous Holden models made their debut. The Kingswood and, of course, the Monaro.
Monaro by Holden, Australia's first sports machine. The racy looks of a high-priced continental rally car, but no fancy foreign price tag. 3 models, Monaro, Monaro GTS, or GTS 327, out to drive you wild.
Monaro!
The pillarless Monaro was the first local vehicle of its type and won Holden a legion of new fans.
I think my favourite 60s, I know my favourite 60s car was the 350 Holden Monaro. And it was a significant car for them because for the first time you had a truly sporting Holden.
Other advertisers loved using Monaros too. And in 1969, the year man landed on the moon, Holden went for extra grunt with the locally designed and built HT-V8. It was a roaring success.
You are in the future, now, in the new Monaro. The new Monaro, imported straight from the future. Now's the time to go Monaro.
Holden in Australia came of age during the 60s. The broad market appeal of many models meant GMH ended the decade right in the middle of the Australian way of life. And Holden was about to make its presence felt on the racetrack.
Coming up next, we'll bury the foot to the floor and roar through some of my favourite memories of Bathurst. Bathurst engenders in everyone, I suppose, this mystique of a degree of difficulty, of a great challenge, of something that we've got that's quite unique in this part of the world. Something we can be very pleased we've got, because a lot of other countries of the world have great racing circuits, but they're not Bathurst. They're not this track. And so I guess when you throw the might of General Motors up against the might of Ford and all these drivers out there sort of battling away on this magnificent circuit, well, it's going to create a bit of a natural sort of legend out there amongst people in Australia who are going to say, hey, this is something different. This is not a home and away game. This is the grand final. Well, 9 wins at Bathurst. I think I've been very fortunate to have managed to have accumulated that many. I mean, your first one's special because you don't know you can do it.
I think that at this stage, I think our biggest threat will come from Colin Bond, as a matter of fact. I think he's got his car pretty well organised. I think Moffat's due for a bit of a bomb out. I'll give him 40 or 50 laps. I think the two Brian Hodgson cars probably in the same boat. Johnny Harvey and Charlie O'Brien's car should be the same as mine.
I did go through a period of time at that race where I just couldn't lose it. I mean, I nursed the car home a couple of times with different problems, and the car refused not to win.
It became a very big part of our business. It gave Holden a complete, instead of being a family fuddy-duddy's car, all of a sudden it got some muscle and some grunt and attracted a new generation of Holden supporters.
But you know, if General Motors without Ford or Ford without General Motors, they've got nothing. Because that mountain was all about the battle between those two giants of the automotive manufacturing scene. Well, in life you always want your challenges, and certainly in 1979 with the Repco reliability trial, that was a major challenge in my life. I was inspired to do it, of course, by the history of what had gone before, by those RedX trials and those trials through the 50s and 60s.
7 days ago, these cars and their crews were sweating it out in the tropical north. 2 days ago, they were in Western Australia's vast plains. No reliability trial has ever offered such extremes of terrain and of heat and cold. Another team member is Lex Davison. Holden's took both first and second team prizes.
It was just incredible. I mean, I had virtually no sleep for a fortnight.
100, fairly slippery.
The top 15 cars, including the 3 Team Commodores and the 3 Cortinas, have got away from the rest.
The result for Commodore was extraordinary. I think to this day, a lot of people think it was all done by mirrors. They think that it was all sort of too easy. No, anything could have happened. So to have succeeded in finishing that event, I thought was probably the greatest sort of thing that I ever actually had to overcome, the greatest challenge I've ever overcome in my life. And to have won it, of course, was icing on the cake.
The importance of motor racing to the development of new models, I think, came from specifically in the area of handling and braking, as much as sheer power and riding comfort. So the cars were very, very stable and very, very safe.
Well, while Peter Brock and his teammates were making Bathurst a must-see event all through the 70s and 80s, Holden released its most famous ad of all.
Australia, what's your favourite sport?
Football.
Snack?
Pies.
Animal?
Kangaroos.
And what's your favourite car, Australia?
Holden.
Let me see, that's football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars, huh?
Right.
Well, you sure sound like Australia to me.
We are.
Well, then you better tell me again, because I just might forget.
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars. Football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
That's football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
Football and meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars.
I think you better tell
And if
me
football, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars go together, so do Holden and safety. GMH has always put the welfare of its drivers and passengers first. Of course, the methods and the way of conveying the message have changed a bit over the years.
The half-hearted signal for a right-hand turn can be a killer. Reversing without care has killed and maimed hundreds. Following too closely is a risky practice, especially when a driver's attention is momentarily distracted. Inattentive driving causes thousands of accidents.
That example of road rage comes from the 1950s, but the essential message has always remained the same. Cars crash, drivers make mistakes, which is why Holden's commitment to safety has always been strong. Today's Commodore continues to set the standard for safety features. Holden's safety technology has two basic aims. One is to help give drivers the ability to avoid collisions in the first place. The other is to help protect drivers and passengers from injury once a collision becomes unavoidable. In higher speed frontal crashes, airbags and seatbelt work together, and it happens in the blink of an eye. 15 milliseconds, the electronic crash sensor decides that this impact is severe. 20 milliseconds, the seatbelt pre-tensioners fire. 25 to 35 milliseconds, driver and passenger airbags break free and begin to inflate. 60 milliseconds, the occupant's head and chest contact the airbags, which begin to deflate immediately. 100 milliseconds, occupants begin to rebound. 150 milliseconds, they begin to travel rearward and make contact with seat backs and head restraints. Commodore's side impact airbag system is yet another Australian first. In the case of a severe side collision, this unique side impact airbag deploys in just 10 milliseconds.
It's loaded with smart thinking. Smart thinking's what to run.
If you want a personal car, but you need a back seat, we may have just what you've been looking for. Tirana hatchback.
Should we take the lino?
Oh, yes, almost forgot.
Both Tirana hatchbacks come with something extra special that costs a little extra. This handy hatchback hutch. First-class accommodation. No reservations.
Got it.
You've got two clear plastic side windows.
Are you ready for bed?
Mm-hmm.
And a full-length zippered rear door. The hatchback hutch. Smart thinking. Tirana style.
Look at new Holden. Totally, radically new. Longer, lower, wide track. A fantastic new shape with fresh, clean flowing lines.
The 70s began well for Holden with the release of the HQ model in 1971. It was hailed in some quarters as the most significant Holden since the original 48-215. For a lot lot of us who were teenagers in the 70s, there seemed to be plenty of Holden models to suit our way of life, especially if, like me, you loved the beach. And you always made sure your Sandman panel van looked immaculate in case visitors dropped in. In 1975, Holden introduced the zippy little Gemini.
New Holden Gemini.
You and I and Gemini.
It soon became Australia's most popular small four-cylinder car. Meanwhile, another top-secret Holden project was underway. It would be a major change of direction for the General. Next up, we look at why Holden now produces a car for the world stage. It was called Project V, and it would change the face of Holden dramatically. The VB Commodore was released in October 1978 to immediate market success and went on to win Wheels Car of the Year. For the 25th consecutive year, Holden was the market leader. Holden, having led the way in the fuel energy crisis environment, found it difficult going when the crisis receded and large cars regained their popularity. But Holden and Commodore were not done yet, as future models would show.
And then suddenly, in the last probably 15 years and really going fast in the last 10 or so, they've become enormously competitive in every way.
The 1988 VN Commodore proved a tremendous success as soon as it was launched, taking a clean sweep of the major motoring awards.
Do you know the best thing? It's a great car to drive. Well, isn't that what it's all about?
Can't say I blame you for liking it.
Like it. We love it.
And so did female drivers in the Grand Prix Holden celebrity races. For some Australians, owning a Holden is not just a matter of driving from point A to point B. It's a complete way of life. Their devotion to one particular model of Holden is all-consuming, and they are fanatical in that devotion.
I think they're the best car on the market, even after 50 years.
When you hop in and drive them, they're just classic to drive, and you cruise down the highway and people look at you and they give you the thumbs up, and that just makes you feel really good that you own one.
I always told Dad that I wanted the car. Just prior to that, a guy offered him $90 for it at work. And I told him if he sold the car, that I'd never talk to him again. Fortunately, he didn't, and he gave me the car. So now I even take my family out in it.
Holden, you in my Holden. Life is simply sublime. I'll be holding you all life through when you're mine, oh mine.
To me, the VT Commodore is a very fashionable, smart-looking car. I really think it is, and I think it can stand among many, many overseas cars and not look like a car. Oh yes, it's a good car, but it's a bit rough and rugged and made for Australia. This suddenly has underneath the toughness, but outside that, it has a style and a classiness about it that I think allows it to mix internationally.
I've been associated in a very small way with some of the latest activities, and it's really mind-boggling.
The greatest benefit in the end of the computer in modern car design is it's the way it's reduced the time it takes to design and build a car. I mean, at Elizabeth, they're building Vectras, Commodores, Statesmen, Caprices, utilities, left and right-hand drive, all on the same line. And that's all run by computers, which has the right version arriving at the right spot to get the right bit put on it for the market to which it's intended. And in fact, we are exporting Holdens to the Middle East and to South America because the world has suddenly realised that they really like big rear-drive cars, and we build the best in the world.
Of course, Holden has been exporting Australian cars since 1954, and throughout the 50s and 60s, GMH continued their overseas push.
Yes, Australia's fabulous Holden, seen here arriving in Cape Town. It's a real fair dinkum job, isn't it? The Holden, the only car in the world specially designed for the tough driving conditions of a country like ours. And that is why the Holden is perfectly at home right here.
I think we were constantly surprised that all of a sudden we were getting into places that some of us had to look at an atlas and find out where they were.
Holden is now a familiar sight in such places as Fiji, Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, South Africa. Just 5 of the more than 50 markets to which it's exported. Further north, on the teeming streets of other cities of the Orient, Holden is also well known and is most often referred to as the car from Australia.
Today, left-hand drive versions of the VT Commodore are rebadged as Chevrolets. Many of these are tackling the sands of Dubai and other Middle Eastern destinations. Since those first FJs crossed the Tasman 45 years ago, Holden's exports have numbered 465,000 vehicles and reached 75 countries, earning the Australian economy more than $8 billion. And as Australia's largest exporter of manufactured goods, Holden has sent nearly 3 million engines around the world. Since that significant November day in 1948, 5.5 million Holdens have been produced to cope with those difficult conditions. And today's Holden range has changed dramatically from the early days, when there was only one model. Now, there are luxury, family, medium, small, commercial, and off-road Holdens.
For the Australian public, in a sense, I suppose it's done for Australia what Henry Ford did for world motoring with the Model T and more specifically America. It's brought the motor car in large numbers at a good price, suited to the environment, to the average person in the country, and I suppose that's what Holden's done over its 50 years.
So what can we expect from Holden in the next 50 years? After the break, we'll gaze into the future.
Now, relive the history of the #1 car manufacturer in Australia on one fantastic 90-minute video, narrated by Greg Norman. Trace Holden's history model by model from its beginning in 1948. This is more than a look at a car, it's Australia's history. Celebrate Holden's 50th anniversary by owning Greg Norman's 50 Years of Holden, out now on video.
Next, Tim's cooking up a storm.
Buttermilk and baking powder can be a volatile mixture.
Home improvement, next on 7.
Question. What do you think a Holden's going to look like in 50 years' time? What do you reckon?
Well, I think they're going to be faster, smoother, and they're going to be more reliable and safer.
They could invent electric cars that can go as fast as normal petrol cars. I think they'll stuck in there and then push it out to move. Okay. Possibly because the ozone layer won't last with a large amount of pollution from cars. You just program something in and you can just do it. Yeah, and just go. Like in first class in a plane. Yeah. You get like line first. And like really, really far in the future, they're going to be like robots that drive big, really big.
Huge. Yeah. Well, it's going to go faster.
Faster, you think?
Yeah,
What do you reckon?
I think it's going to be more aerodynamic. More speed, the better.
I think they'll
have more safety features, and I think they'll come in lots of different colours and things.
I think it's going to be anti-gravity.
Anti-gravity, we'll go for that one, yeah.
I'd expect that, just like the original car, they'll be influenced by the environment, both urban and country, as much as the old car was. Different power sources, totally different packages from what we're expecting to see today. I mean, cars won't be cars that we understand.
I think that you'll be developing modular vehicles. Matter of fact, we were playing with that back in the late 70s, where you've got a structure and then you can take modules of it and it can become a small utility, it can be a fun vehicle and so on. There's going to be a lot of interchangeability.
I'd hope we're still building cars that, well, the number one selling car in Australia here. 4 doors, maybe, weird sort of power, I suppose. Fuel cells, hybrid mix, and hopefully reconfigurable. Cars that take you somewhere rather than you having to drive them.
They'll be running fuel cell technology, which is based on producing hydrogen from a source such as methanol, or you can even produce hydrogen from petrol. So all you get at the exhaust pipe is water vapour. That's all you get.
I think that regardless of what you do, because of the population problems, I think cars have to be a lot smaller. I don't think we'll see the big cars that you see in America today. I think they're gone.
The size of people's increasing, so therefore the argument that cars going forward, the traditional green argument, they need to be small, to be fuel efficient and all the rest of it. Expecting we're going to have different fuel sources, different power systems in the car, and that people are actually getting bigger, not smaller, you'd have to say that compact cars might be right for urban environment, which will be totally different in that time frame. But generally, if you want to fit a family in a car, it won't be any different to today. You'll need a big car.
Well, I think it's going to be a radical change. I think that if people think it's going to be an evolution, I think that that's probably missing the mark. I can see more of a revolution coming up. I think the seeds of revolution are there now. There's a lot of young people involved in the car manufacturing business who are looking at fuel cells and composite body panels and probably all sorts of things like electromagnetic distancing from other cars, and perhaps even to ride upon the road. Perhaps they don't actually touch the road anymore in 50 years' time. They're riding above the road and somehow. But I think there's going to be some radical changes.
So there are obviously many more Holden dreams yet to be fulfilled. It has really been a remarkable journey so far. The first 50 years have been made up of good old Aussie ingenuity, perseverance, style, and lots of fun. Everyone at Holden is appreciative that you've taken these cars to your hearts. And as Holden goes global, we can promise that there are many more great cars still to come. We can't tell you what the 100th anniversary model will look like. Maybe one of our young future gazers from Albert Park Primary School will be in charge of design and production. But we can guarantee you that the 50 years leading up to the 100th birthday will be just as exciting as the first 50 years. As Ben Chipley said when he launched that first 48-215, good luck to the Holden car and good luck to all that ride therein. Everyone Holden thanks you for sharing this anniversary.
We got this country moving, we helped them on their way. We built the best, they stood the test every working day. It's heart and it's commitment and standing by your mates. It's pride in our achievement, and we are proud to say that we are.
What makes a cop cool? If it's Don Johnson, it's his clothes, his car and his attitude. 9:30 tomorrow, Cheech Marin and Don Johnson star in Nash Bridges. Stay with us for home improvement. Then there's out of this world fun on Third Rock from the Sun.
We are Australia, we are one, but we are many, and from all the lands on earth we come, we share a dream, and say Australia.